Hello, welcome to Mondays with Mary. Today we are finally going to talk about different types of Mary. So first of all, what is a type? A type is a prefiguring or a foreshadowing an Old Testament figure of a New Testament figure. And so one type that we've already talked about is a thing, in this case, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant there's the literal sense. The Ark of the Covenant in this case actually existed, but the literal sense of it being touched, of it being carried, of it being built, of it being stolen, etc. Those are all the literal meaning. But underneath the literal meaning is a spiritual meaning, and that is a foreshadowing or a prefiguring of Mary, who is the fulfillment of the Ark of the Covenant, as you see in one of our previous videos. So in this case, you would call the Ark of the Covenant the type of Mary. Mary would be the antitype. The Ark of the Covenant would be the type. The Ark of the Covenant is the foreshadowing. Mary is the fulfillment. And so this plays out in many different ways in the Old Testament and the New Testament, as we see a whole recapitulation of the Old Testament in the New Testament, which again we talked about in a previous video. So another example that we've already talked about as a type of Mary is Eve. Eve is the mother of the living, and Mary is the spiritual mother of the living. Eve is the type, Mary is the antitype. Eve is the prefigurement, Mary, or foreshadowing. Mary is the fulfillment. So those are two examples, both a person and a thing, that are types of Mary, Mary being the fulfillment of, or the antitype in the New Testament. So today I want to look at one more person who can be considered a type of Mary, and that is Sarah, the wife of Abraham, the mother of Isaac. Sarah, as we know, becomes Sarai. Sarah is the free woman in the story, as opposed to Hagar, who is the slave woman, who also gives Abraham an heir. But Sarah is the free woman who gives Abraham the chosen heir. And so in this case, she parallels or foreshadows Mary, because Mary is the ultimately free woman, because unlike the rest of mere human beings, she was conceived without sin, and therefore she was free from sin. She was never a slave to sin like the rest of us. And so in this case, we are sort of the Hagar of the story, and Mary is Sarah. So Mary, in this case, Sarah is a type of Mary. Mary is an antitype, looking at the freedom aspect. Also, we see that Sarah conceives in a miraculous fashion because she is old and she is barren, and yet she conceives Isaac, who will become the chosen heir of Abraham. Mary, as we know clearly, conceives miraculously. As far as we know, she was fertile, she was young, and yet she was still a virgin, and she conceived. And so her conception was also a miraculous conception, as was Sarah's. Finally, we have Sarah, who conceives and gives birth and raises Isaac, who becomes the head of many nations. And Mary, we know, conceives and bears and raises Jesus, who becomes the head of the mystical body, or in some sense the head of all nations. And so it gets even more interesting and more beautiful, because we realize that their children, one is a type of the other. So Isaac is actually a type of Jesus. The most clear example of this is, besides the fact that Isaac is the head of many nations, and Jesus, of course, is the head of the mystical body, we have Isaac, who at a certain point in his life carries the wood that will be for his own sacrifice, the sacrifice of his life by Abraham, by the will of the Father. And we see that, of course, perfected in Jesus in the New Testament, when Jesus carries the wood of the cross and is ultimately sacrificed, gives himself in sacrifice by will of the Father. And so we see we see Sarah, who is a free woman, conceives miraculously, is the grandmother, as it were, of many nations, and who gives birth to a type of Christ. We see Mary, who is the ultimately free woman, the free from all sin, who conceived miraculously as a virgin, who is whose son is the head of the mystical body, and whose son is the fulfillment of Isaac, Jesus being the fulfillment of Isaac, Isaac being the type of Jesus. And so Sarah is a type of Mary. Mary is the fulfillment. Mary is the antitype. Mary is ultimately free woman who continues to intercede for all of us, and to guide us, and to protect us, and to continue to bring us closer to her son. And so that's about it for today. Next week we want to look at a couple more types of Mary, probably Rebecca and Rachel. And so until then, you have a beautiful week and see you on Monday. God bless you.